couple of videos ago, I talked about my gripes with having an American identity. I wanted to question why we have national identities at all and what that actually brings us. Now, in many ways, national identity seems like a thing of the past. In the new internet global warming world, it's increasingly important to consider oneself as part of the world and not simply a country. And with this globalization comes a different question. How do we shape our identities within this new reality? If we belong to the world, we're all one. Then how do we distinguish ourselves from others? The classical means such as religion, ethnicity, and occupation seem to be less relevant now. With an increase of multiculturalism, interracial unions, and a wish to distinguish our identities from our work, we are left with defining ourselves based on our tastes and preferences. The brands we choose to consume make a statement about who we are, what we're like, and what we enjoy. The products we buy act as a signal of identity, allowing customers to construct, express, and communicate useful information about our self-image to others, but also to ourselves. Far from being a frivolous activity, shopping is how we reassure ourselves about our authenticity and our very existence, says Professor Campbell, who says the phrase retail therapy isn't a joke, it's a description of our reality. It's not only about showcasing our identities anymore, it's become how we form our identities. And what are the effects of this? Marx talked about how capitalism alienated us. It makes our lives about work. It makes friends competition, and it makes us a cog in a machine. Our lives are first and foremost devoted to labor, and most often mindless and meaningless labor at that. And this causes suffering in the human. Our jobs would like us to be machines. They would like our whole identity to be defined by our work, which is why you end up going to interviews talking about how passionate you are about accounting. It's just what you want to do because it makes you so happy to be able to contribute positively to XYZ business. You could then argue that capitalism has, in a way, left a hole in our identity. It stripped us from our community, from purpose, and even from ourselves. And then it came rushing back to fill that void with consumable identities. Capitalism did what capitalism does best. They saw an opportunity in the market and they seized it. So, what happens to our identities if it has become a commodity? Commodification is taking a good or service that is not intended to be sold, owning it, and then commercializing it to be transformed into an object of trade. Nothing exemplifies this commodification better than the self-branding phenomenon. This industry suggests that self-branding is a form of self-empowerment, but it's also an exercise in self-commodification. People are asked, in essence, to relate to themselves as a product. And interestingly, we're very much aware of this, and we don't shy away from it. In fact, people who push this narrative insist that if you treat yourself as a product, then you can beat the corporate world at its own game by turning the power of branding around to your own personal advantage. But the result of self-commodity is a loss of spirituality and depth. When we confuse ourselves with something that can simply be bought or sold, we are, first of all, tempted to buy into this idea. Because buying our identities is a quick fix to an existential crisis, or an easy way to calm the general existential dread that we all feel. But this simplicity comes at a cost. You see, any product under capitalism can be broken apart and mass-produced. And as with any mass-produced product or service, it inevitably becomes boring, uniform, and soulless. I think we see this well in the plastic surgery industry. Despite most plastic surgeons agreeing that beauty is subjective, they somehow all end up selling and producing the same few looks. So integrating something as complex as beauty into the market economy destroys the true meaning of what beauty is in the first place. It reduces beauty to different products, packages, or modules that you can pick and choose from and buy. It makes people chase trends instead of exploring the diversity of what can be beautiful. And in turn, when we're told time and time again that these same faces are what is beautiful and desirable and what most people look like actually, then we, in many cases, will want subconsciously to become like that as well. We don't want to stand out so harshly from the rest of the perfectly plastic world. This is the same process that occurs in our identities. It is referred to in sociology as diffusion and can be explained as the result of commodification. Diffusion is the process of depoliticizing or watering down the values, meanings, ideals, and subversive potential of a group. Businesses use diffusion to alter the meanings of and commodify things that may not have been originally accepted by the public. In doing this, they are able to present certain enjoyable parts of identities and leave out other aspects, constructing the identity or item to be more marketable. But as we see time and time again with public people, someone's identity is not particularly marketable. You can attempt to construct a fake persona, but somewhere along the line, people will dig down into your Twitter history. They will find parts of you that aren't so pretty and that aren't so marketable and that doesn't fit well with whatever brand is the main sponsor of this public persona. Nobody fits within this idea of enjoyable and unproblematic flawlessness that the market might wish to sell and see. And we try so hard for that not to be the reality by canceling anyone who doesn't fit into the scheme. Now we have so many examples of things that have been commodified already. Classic examples are things like subcultures and movements. Like think of how they commodified BLM and feminism and even something as banal as punk culture or skate culture. But subcultures and movements aren't the only things that are being distilled, bottled, and sold. It doesn't stop there anymore. We have turned whole ethnic identities into braids and fashion style. Love has become a cost-benefit analysis through dating apps of our emotional labor. And hell, we've even commodified nature itself at this point. So where does it stop? And long term, what does this mean for us? So these are just the observations that I see, and I am curious about what the long-term effects of this is for humanity. And I have this not so great feeling that what it could mean is long-term us not being able to identify ourselves outside of traditional branding and all the products that we are surrounded by. And in turn, the effects of this being that we even further can't imagine a world without capitalism and marketing and branding, and that it removes us way more than we already are removed from seeing ourselves as a part of nature and seeing humanity as its own entity. And that's concerning to me. But yeah. Those are just some of my thoughts. Let me know if you've ever thought about this or if I'm just the only one who has noticed.